So, I'm sure you saw the headlines. Everybody was talking about it. A record-breaking Black Friday. The numbers were absolutely huge, and the story seemed pretty clear. The American consumer is strong, confident, and spending like crazy. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain and find out what that record really tells us.
And this is the number that started it all, $11.8 billion. That's how much was spent online on Black Friday alone. I mean, wow. It's a massive figure that seems to paint a picture of a really healthy economy, right?
And yeah, that was the story you heard everywhere. The general take was, hey, this is a clear sign that people are feeling good, they have money to spend, and the economy is just humming along.
But is that really what was going on? As soon as you start to scratch the surface, a much more complicated and, frankly, a way more interesting picture starts to take shape. So the real question is, what's hiding behind that giant number?
All right, first up, let's just tackle that headline story head on. At first glance, everything seems simple and positive, but as you're about to see, the real story is buried in the details. And hey, on the surface, you can't argue with these numbers. They look great. Black Friday online sales shot up over 9% from last year, and overall retail sales, a very healthy 4.1% climb. These look like slam dunk numbers. But this is the moment where we have to put on our detective hats and look a little closer, because the most important clues aren't in those big splashy headlines. They're in the data that shows us how we were actually spending our money. Okay, check this out, because this is where it gets really telling. Yeah, overall retail sales up 4.1%. We see that. But then look at the next line. The average price of the things we bought, that jumped by a whopping 7%. So, wait a minute. How does that math work? Well, it works because the actual number of items people put in their carts, the amount of stuff they took home, that went down by 2%.
And this slide just lays it out in the plainest terms possible. All of us spent more money to get less stuff. That big record-breaking spending number wasn't driven by a massive shopping spree. It was driven by higher prices. That's not a story about prosperity. It's a story about inflation.
So that makes you wonder, right? If prices are way up and we're actually buying fewer things, how on earth did people afford to set a new spending record? Where did all our money come from? Well, the answer, in a word, is debt. And the incredible rise of buy now, pay later services paints a very different picture, one of financial strain, not strength. Just look at that figure, $20.2 billion. That's the forecast for what people will spend using buy now, pay later just this holiday season. This isn't some fringe payment method anymore, folks. It has gone completely mainstream. And the data here just lays it all out. Get this, almost 2/3 of all shoppers, 64%, literally went into the holidays planning to use credit cards or buy now, pay later simply to stretch their budgets. And when people use that kind of financing, they tend to spend more, about 12% more on average. This is all happening while our national credit card debt has just exploded past $1.1 trillion. So yeah, that record spending wasn't cash from a savings account. It was borrowed. So we've got inflation and debt driving the numbers, but that still doesn't tell us who was doing all this spending. And it turns out the answer reveals a pretty divided economic reality. And to get what's happening, you have to understand this idea of a K-shaped economy. It's actually a pretty simple concept. Just picture the letter K. After a big economic event, the people at the top, their fortunes shoot right back up. That's the top arm of the K. But for most other people, things either stay flat or get worse. And that's the bottom arm of the K, heading down. Two groups having two totally different experiences. And that K-shape is exactly what we saw this Black Friday. You had the top tier of earners who are actually responsible for about half of all consumer spending, and for them, things were looking pretty good. Spending on luxury clothes was up 21%. But then you look at the other side, the majority. Households making less than 50 grand a year, they actually plan to cut their spending by 12%. They're getting squeezed by wages that aren't keeping up with inflation, while the price of absolute essentials, like food, just keeps going up. Okay, so we've got inflation, we've got debt, and we have this growing inequality. But there's one more kind of hidden piece to this puzzle, a big reason why all those prices were so high to begin with. It really comes down to this thing called the tariff effect, and it's a pretty simple chain reaction. Step 1, new tariffs get put on goods coming into the country. Step 2, suddenly the average cost for a company to import something jumps, in this case, all the way to 16.6%. Step 3, well, retailers aren't just going to eat that cost. So, Step 4, they pass it directly on to, you guessed it, you, the consumer. And the final result? You pay a higher price when you get to the checkout counter.
And this wasn't just some abstract economic number. It hit the stuff we buy for the holidays the hardest. We're talking an effective tariff rate of 27% on clothes, 23% on Christmas decorations, and around 22–23% on toys and games. So a big chunk of that price hike you felt, it was essentially a hidden tax from this policy.
All right, let's pull all of these pieces together now. What is the real story here? What does this record actually mean when we look at the whole picture?
First, that record was built on a foundation of inflation. Prices were up a massive 7% across the board.
And because of those high prices, we actually brought home less stuff, 2% fewer items to be exact. We spent more to get less.
And how did we manage to spend more? We put it on the card, or used services like Buy Now, Pay Later, which propped up the final number with over $20 billion in financing.
And finally, let's not forget that those prices were made even higher by policy, an average tariff of 16.6% pushing costs up before the products even hit the shelves.
So, when you strip it all away, the big Black Friday record wasn't a story about a booming economy for everyone. It was a story about inflation, about rising debt, and about a widening gap between different groups of people. It's the perfect reminder that the headline number is almost never the whole story. So I'll leave you with this. The next time a huge, record-breaking number flashes across your screen, what are the questions you're going to ask to find out what's really going on?